Hello, and thank you for being with me again. At this time of the war in the Middle East and all the other conflicts going on around the world, we find that many people are wondering about where God is in the midst of all of this chaos and all of this suffering. And sometimes people can be quite put off of the whole idea of God because they can't understand why He would allow this to happen. But I thought maybe an easy way of explaining how I understand it is based on something which was in my experience. For part of my career, I designed roads. And when you design a road, obviously the road is designed based on not only where it has to go from and get to, but also the terrain it has to pass over or through, how many bends there have to be, how wide the road is, and so on, how far any side entries are from where you can see them. And then this all goes into deciding the speed limit for that road. And we know that when the road is built, we put up signage all along to say what we have to look out for that's coming ahead. And I use this simply because when you end up in a vehicle as the driver, you actually have free will as to what you're going to do with that vehicle. You can drive as recklessly or as safely as you like, but that is up to you as the driver. And this is why I see it as similar, because I believe that the cause of the suffering and of these wars is the fact that as humans, we have free will. Now, as I say, on the road, we rely very heavily on the fact that drivers will be responsible, because you cannot guarantee your own safety on the road. You can only do your best to be safe and then rely on those that you're going to encounter along your way being responsible on their part and thereby avoid any accidents. The interesting thing is that if someone were to decide that they're not going to take any notice of any road signs and just drive as they feel like driving, I've never heard anyone say, why on earth would they build roads when they can bring such pain and suffering? And they really can. I had first-hand experience of this in that when my wife and I were married only 5 months, my sister-in-law was killed in a motor accident. And it came about for a seemingly silly reason. The fact is, she found this boyfriend, she was only 17 at the time, and he had his own car and so on. And so they went out one evening with another couple who were friends of theirs. And on their return, as they were coming down what we would call a motorway, a highway, or freeway, depending on where we are in the world, there was a roadblock. The police were stopping people to check their documents. It turned out that he didn't have a driving license, and so he panicked and decided to try and outrun the police, who obviously gave chase because he didn't stop when they told him to. He ended up rolling the car, and not only was my sister-in-law killed at the scene, but the girl who was sitting behind her, their friend, was so badly injured that she remained in a vegetative state for more than 10 years before she finally died. And her family fell apart because the parents ended up divorcing as a result of their suffering, and so their whole family was destroyed. And so, as I say, simply because he didn't have his driving license, this accident occurred and this pain and suffering were caused. But as I say again, I haven't heard people say, well, why on earth do they create roads when they can cause pain and suffering like that? We accept that roads are necessary for us as we go through life to get from where we are to where we need to get to. Well, now the same is true on a spiritual level. Our free will is essential for us to get from where we are to where we need to get to by the end of our lives. The problem comes when we are irresponsible spiritually. Then all sorts of difficulties and pain and suffering arise. You see, as humans, we require a number of years to mature and to develop to a state where we can really look after ourselves. And this is why God's intention is that there be families where there's the father's and the mother's input, and that between them they're able to educate, bring up their children, and make them responsible people able to go through life and live life as it should be lived. Of course, if this upbringing includes true spiritual training and formation, that person will arrive in a much better place than if they're taught to fight their way through life and to get only what they want and just to think of that. The thing would be that, for example, going back to that accident I spoke about, if that boy's parents had been responsible enough to not allow him to drive until he had his driving license, or if he had been responsible enough already to get his own driving license before he went driving, he probably would not have wanted to outrun the police, and so most likely that accident wouldn't have occurred. And this is true through the rest of our lives. If the parents are not imparting responsibility to their children and not making them grow up as responsible adults, we are going to have these difficulties. And we know that more and more the family is under attack. Many people are growing up with solo parents, and the solo parent condition is an impossible task, because if one person has to work to earn a living for their families and then come home after a day's work and think about cooking, cleaning, washing, ironing, getting children's homework done, getting children bath, getting children to bed, and everything else, it is just too much for one person. And so, people do their very best, but they can only do so much as one person. And those children grow up lacking either the father or the mother's input, which is essential from both sides for our full development, and very often lacking a feeling of being truly loved, because that parent is so stretched they don't have enough time to show love fully for their children, with the very best of intentions, as I say. And so we can say that we're setting up conditions where someone who grows up in a situation like that has not actually learnt what responsible parenting is about. They've seen their solo parent trying their very best, and then they in turn form some form of a family, but not based on this solid foundation. And so obviously they're going to lack the wherewithal to truly implement a real formation of their own children, unless they're very fortunate and manage to overcome their own difficulties. And so, as I say, if we turn to what happens in the world, if parents are responsible enough to train their children to have a Christian mindset in which we not only love our neighbors, but we do good for those, even those who harm us. And you can very easily imagine in our world, if we had this mindset generally of doing good for those who hate us even, there would be no wars. And so we can't turn around and say, well, where is God in all of this? God has set us on our path that we need to be on. He has given us free will, and our free will is there to liberate us, to allow us to become fully what we need to be. It's what we require to get from where we are to where we need to get to. It's up to us to heed the warning signs, to not shy away from them as so many people do, and to apply the teachings we're given so that we may bring peace, joy, and love to our world in as far as it depends on us. And may God bless you. Thank you.